Walt Disney films have shaped our childhood, but they also overflow with surprises and mysteries. And you'll see the childhood universe we know also hides much darker sides, hidden signs, terrifying stories, and betrayal. I delved into the depths of Disney's history to find the 6 craziest secrets. Walt's favorite film is the creepiest of all. So the 1950s will be marked by creation of some of Disney's iconic classics, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, Alice in Wonderland, and especially a project on which Walt places great importance, Peter Pan. But this Disney classic that dazzled us all hides a very eerie story. Peter would be a dead child. You don't believe me? Listen to this. First and foremost, it's important to know that Walt Disney is an absolute fan of Peter Pan since his early childhood. Peter Pan is a little boy living in Neverland where he stopped growing up. It was Walt's dream. But who is Peter Pan? Peter is originally a character created by writer J.M. Barrie in the early 20th century. While the animated film makes the story joyful, its origin is much darker. When he was young, Barrie, the author of Peter Pan, lost his 13-year-old brother. Faced with devastated parents and a mother descending into madness, he begins to adopt all the traits of his brother. His clothes, his voice, he even sleeps in his bed. The craziest part is that the psychological trauma is such that his growth stops. He develops a form of dwarfism. He literally stops growing. It reminds me of someone, Barrie, wanting to replace his brother who went to heaven and will forever be a 13-year-old child. In Peter Pan, we indeed have a group of lost boys who stop growing because they go to live on an imaginary country hidden in the sky. With all of this information, one wonders if they are not children who landed in paradise, rather than simply lost children. And you? Do you believe in this theory? Snow White is the biggest animated project of all time. In the 1930s, Walt Disney wanted to embark on a completely crazy project, an animated feature film, the biggest animated feature film the world had ever seen. 83 minutes, and to do this, he drew inspiration from a well-known German fairy tale, Snow White. While the film is filled with songs and cute little animals, the real story of Snow White is far from what we see in the film. Remember that in Disney's Snow White, she's the fairest maiden in the kingdom, and her stepmother wants to kill her to take place as the beauty queen, and to do so, she first sends a hunter who must bring back her heart. But when he doesn't succeed, she tries to kill Snow White herself with a poisoned apple. This is already eerie, but the tale is even worse. In the tale, the stepmother tries 3 times. She attempts to strangle Snow White with a corset, poison her with a comb, and finally arrives with the infamous apple. Snow White eventually succumbs with the apple in the tale. But the crucial detail is that she's not awakened by the prince, but by the dwarves who make her coffin fall. As seen in Disney, the stepmother is punished for her act, but gets a sentence much worse than death. She has to wear burning shoes. Changing this tale into a masterpiece required a gigantic effort and many technical and artistic innovations. 750 people, 400,000 images from 1,500,000 hand-drawn and painted frames. The team worked on it for 4 years. Want an antidote to gauge Walt Disney's crazy genius? During production, live rabbits, skunks, and horses were brought to the studio to study their movements. Apparently it worked so well that he did it again for Bambi, with 2 fawns. Walt is fully committed and would do anything to make his project a success. Walt receives a customized Oscar. It's accompanied by 7 small statues to illustrate the 7 dwarfs. This film is a revolution for Disney, which will later become the grand master of animated feature films. Mickey was a rabbit and put Walt Disney in dire straits. I can't make this video without talking about the origin, the OG, the boss of animated characters, Mickey Mouse. And I was very shocked by some information. Originally, Mickey was a rabbit that plunged Disney into a rather tragic situation. It all started in the 1920s, after serving in World War I. Yes, he apparently drew little characters on other soldiers' helmets. Walt Disney launched his first studio. He received an order from Universal for an animated cartoon, and that's how Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was born in 1926. Well, it looks a little bit like Mickey from Wish, but at that time it was revolutionary because Walt drew inspiration from real cinema in his drawings. The shots, the angles reflected a real point of view, and even in terms of editing, it resembled a cartoon worthy of cinema. But the contract with Universal was apparently a bit fraudulent because Universal eventually claimed the rights rights to the character, and Walt lost ownership over his own creation. You can't think it can get any worse, but it does. Another production also stole part of his team, and he lost everything. The Adventures of Oswald the Rabbit really put Walt in jeopardy, so he started from scratch and formed a team in his garage with about a dozen people. His creativity and determination really paid off, with 8,000 drawings per week and 15 hours of work per day. For the entire team, they eventually created Steamboat Willie, Mickey's first cartoon in 1928. The little mouse has 4 fingers because they felt that with 5 fingers it just looked really weird. Well, from the moment you dress a mouse and give it a boat, nothing surprises me anymore. And to prove how much we're dealing with a family creation, Mickey is voiced by Walt himself. A fun fact, but later on for 30 years, Mickey and Minnie were voiced by 2 actors who were married in real life. Wayne Allwyn and Russi Taylor. Mickey and Minnie really exist out there somewhere. Our little mouse will also be the first animated character to have his star on Hollywood Boulevard. When Walt died, everything collapsed. The Little Mermaid saved everything. Walt Disney died in 1966, and the problem with an empire that's led by such a charismatic figure is that when he leaves, everything collapses. Indeed, investors withdraw, causing a crisis at Disney. Fortunately, park openings and the creation of Disney Channel and other products saved the day. But on the film side, part of the team leaves and is replaced by newcomers trying to do Disney without Disney. In 1985, they hit rock bottom with the film The Black Cauldron. Didn't know it? That's normal. It's one of Disney's biggest failures. It cost $30 million to make and only brought in 21. In the turmoil, a film will come to save its burning company and even extinguish the fire with water. And water is in the ocean and also under the sea. Okay, I'll stop. You get it. It's The Little Mermaid. Was released in 1989. In addition to performing well at the box office, it won 2 Oscars. The basic story of Ariel is quite grim. Ariel trades her voice for legs to win the heart of a prince, but there are 2 problems with this contract made with Ursula. Firstly, her legs cause her terrible pain with every step, and secondly, if the prince marries, she dies. Except in the real story, the prince does indeed get married, and she has 2 options, either to stab him so he'll never marry, or to commit suicide. Unable to harm the man that she loves, she opts for the second option by throwing herself to the sea. What a gift for making movies based on far-fetched stories! And speaking of which, I could not leave you without the story that, for me, is the most horrific because it's true. Pocahontas really existed and lived in nightmare. Pocahontas is the only Disney character who actually existed. The Disney version is inspired by the story of a real woman, Mawataka, a Native American from the Powhatan tribe who appears in John Smith's autobiography. Okay, but where does the name Pocahontas come from? Well, it was Mawataka's nickname, which means mischievous or sassy young woman. What we see in the Disney movie is quite similar to the true story, but one detail has shocked us. The real John and Pocahontas lovers in the Disney movie, John was actually 27 years old, and Pocahontas was 12. In the writings, the nature of the relationship is unclear. John Smith wrote that she loved him and wanted to flee her tribe. Pocahontas was actually kidnapped by the English, forcibly married, and then sent to England. There she fell ill and died in excruciating pain. Fortunately, this is not the story we saw in our VHS tapes when we were 8 years old. To return to a lighter subject, Pocahontas was launched alongside another film project that nobody really believed in, The Lion King. It's crazy to think that within the team, no one wanted to work on The Lion King because they were convinced that The Lion King, the first film without a human reference, would be a flop. Now we know that The Lion King has made over $1 billion in box office revenue. That is considered the favorite Disney movie of most people and marks a pinnacle of Disney movies of the 1990s. Again, we're inspired by a dark story, but that will be for next time. If you like this video, tell us in the comments what your favorite Disney movie is and if you want a sequel to the craziest hidden stories of Disney.